How are you all, my dear children? Myself Sujata. In this session, we are going to learn a new chapter titled as Footprints Without Feet by H.G. Wells. Before getting into the lesson in detail, let us know about the author H.G. Wells. Herbert George Wells was born on 21st September 1866 and was an English writer. He was a prolific writer of both fiction and non-fiction. He wrote dozens of novels, short stories, and works of social commentary, history, satire, biography, and autobiography. Best known science fiction novels include The Time Machine and The War of the World. He died on 13 August 1946. Let us know about the characters. The main character is Griffin. He is the eccentric scientist who makes himself invisible. He does not hesitate to resort to criminal activities to remain a mystery. Mrs. Hall. She is resolute but superstitious owner of the inn at Iping where Griffin stays. And Mr. Jaffers, he is a dutiful policeman who fails to arrest the invisible scientist. Okay, this story is about a scientist named Griffin. He had been discovering ways which could make a man invisible and finally swallowed certain rare drugs that made him invisible as he was afraid of being discovered in London, where he had committed some crimes. He runs away to a remote village. However, he runs out of money and resorts to robbery, using his advantage of invisibility. Okay, let us get into the chapter. Two boys on a London street were surprised to see fresh, muddy footprints of bare feet without finding who was making them. They gazed. Again, a fresh footmark appeared from nowhere. Further footprints followed, one after another, descending the steps and progressing down the street. The boys followed, fascinated, until the muddy impressions became fainter and fainter and at last disappeared altogether. The bewildered means the puzzled boys had been following a scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. These footprints had been made by Griffin, an eccentric scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent. Griffin, the scientist, had carried out experiment after experiment to prove that the human body could become invisible. He swallowed certain rare drugs and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass. He was a brilliant scientist, but a lawless person. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. In revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. To get away without being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus, he became a homeless wanderer without clothes, without money, and quite invisible. Finally, he happened to step in some mud and left footprints as he walked. Griffin managed to escape from the two boys who followed his footprints in London, but his adventures were by no means over. It was a cold midwinter. The air was bitterly cold and he could not do without clothes. Instead of walking about the streets, he decided to slip into a big London store for warmth. When the store closed at night, he put on new clothes, consumed meat and coffee from the restaurant, and went to sleep on a pile of quills. He overslept and was seen by the shop assistants in the morning. He again took off his clothes to escape from them. When he saw a couple of them approaching, he panicked and began to run. That is, he was afraid and he started to run. In the end, he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his newly found clothes. Once more, he became invisible in the chill January air. This time, he decided to try the stock of a theatrical company in the hope of finding not only clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above his shoulders. Shivering with cold, he hurried to Drury Lane, the center of the theater world. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way invisible upstairs and came out a little later wearing bandages round his forehead, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy side whiskers, that is the beard, and a large hat. To escape without being seen, he callously attacked, that is without mercy, attacked the shopkeeper from behind, after which he robbed him of all the money he could find. Now read and find out answers for the following questions. How did the invisible man first become visible? Next question. Why was he wandering the streets? Okay, as he has done a crime, he was eager to get away from crowded London. He took a train to the village of Iping. He booked 2 rooms at the local inn. The arrival of a stranger at an inn in winter was in any case an unusual event. A stranger of such uncommon appearance set all tongues wagging. Mrs. Hall, landlord's wife, made every effort to be friendly. Griffin had no desire to talk and told her, "My reason for coming to Iping is a desire for solitude. I do not wish to be disturbed in my work. Besides, an accident has affected my face." In view of the fact that he was an eccentric scientist and had paid her in advance, Mrs. Hall was prepared to excuse his strange habits and irritable temper. The stolen money did not last long. He admitted he had no more ready cash and pretended that he was expecting a check to arrive at any moment. Shortly afterwards, a curious episode occurred. Very early in the morning, a clergyman and his wife were awakened by noises in the study. They heard the ching, that is the high-pitched ringing sound of money being taken from the clergyman's desk. With a poker, that is a metal rod, grasped firmly in his hand, the clergyman asked the robber to surrender. To his amazement, the room appeared to be empty. He and his wife looked under the desk and behind the curtains and even up the chimney. There wasn't a sign of anybody, yet the desk had been opened and the housekeeping money was missing. "Extraordinary affair," the clergyman kept saying for the rest of the day. That same day, when Mrs. Hall found Griffin's room open with his bandages and clothes lying around, she and her husband entered the room. Suddenly, both of them were attacked by the bedroom chair. As she and her husband turned away in terror, the extraordinary chair pushed them both out of the room and then appeared to slam and lock the door after them. They could not see who was doing this. Mrs. Hall felt that the furniture was haunted by spirits. The feeling among the neighbors was that the trouble was caused by witchcraft, that is, the practice of magic. The strange scientist was strongly suspected of having had a hand in it. Suspicion grew even stronger when he suddenly produced some ready cash, though he had admitted not long before that he had no money. The village constable was secretly sent for. Instead of waiting for the constable, Mrs. Hall went to the scientist who had somehow mysteriously appeared from his empty bedroom. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hall asked Griffin to explain all the unusual happenings. Griffin lost his temper and decided to tell everything. He threw off his bandages, whiskers, spectacles, and even nose. The horrified people in the bar found themselves staring at a headless man. Mr. Jaffers, the constable, was quite surprised to find that he had to arrest a man without a head. But Jaffers was not easily prevented from doing his duty. If a magistrate's warrant ordered a person's arrest, then that person had to be arrested with or without his head. There followed a remarkable scene as the policeman tried to get hold of a man who was becoming more and more invisible as he threw off one garment after another. Finally, a shirt flew into the air, and the constable found himself struggling with someone he could not see at all. Some people tried to help him, but found themselves hit by blows that seemed to come from nowhere. In the end, Jaffers was knocked unconscious as he made a last attempt to hold on to the unseen scientist. There were nervous, excited cries of, "Hold him!" but this was easier said than done. Griffin had shaken himself free and no one knew where to lay hands on him. Hope the story was interesting. Okay, now find out answers for these questions. First question, why does Mrs. Hall find the scientist eccentric? What curious episode occurs in the study? What other extraordinary things happen at the inn? Okay, now read the chapter carefully, learn the unfamiliar words, and answer the questions given at the end of the chapter. Meet you in the next session. Thank you.